Coming up this weekend in the Road to UFC Tournament Championships, this time at bantamweight, we have fellow Japanese prospects Rinya Nakamura and Toshiomi Kazama battling it out for that chance at a UFC contract. And both of these finishers, Matt, and I say finishers, are very, very interesting prospects coming into this tournament championship. I mean, if you look at it for Rinya Nakamura, he's probably the most polished of the guys that are fighting, the 8 fighters in these tournament finals, whether it's from flyweight all the way up to lightweight. And you might know Nakamura from, like, you know, wrestling meets, you know, because if you look at him, I mean, the 2017 under 23 61 kilogram world champion freestyle wrestler, and he's definitely that type of prospect. He competed at Worlds in 2018. Team Japan finished 3rd in that tournament in Iowa. And if you look at it for Nakamura, I mean, this is a guy, like, his family, or his father, was one of the originators of Shuto MMA over in Japan in the 90s. So really cool stuff there from Nakamura. But you look at it, already 6-0 as a pro. He just debuted a couple of years ago in 2021. And that was it. I mean, when wrestling 2017, 2018, he kind of hit his peak. He had a plan on going to the Olympics, but with the way that things went, he just decided to transition into MMA. And by goodness, I'm glad he did.
Pretty good at it.
You look at this guy from Southpaw, you look at the striking that he possesses. He doesn't necessarily look just like a wrestler. And I think of guys that got to the nth degree of wrestling, ended up in the UFC or the top levels of MMA. You look at a guy like Mark Madsen with his Greco-Roman. I mean, Mark Madsen probably dreams of fighting like Rinya Nakamura someday. Like, you look at this guy, and he's
Let's wait till he gets to the UFC.
Yeah,
first.
but he's really, really scratched the surface of what you can become, having just such a high-level skill set. And for Kazama, the same thing could be said. I mean, you look at his jiu-jitsu, he's competing at meets all the time, but you look at how his jiu-jitsu translates into MMA, and it's perfect. It fits like a glove. So you look at it for Kazama, even that win that he had before the Road to UFC tournament, and that was against Shinsuke Miyabi, and that was a one-night tournament that he had in that one. I mean, my God, like, chickling behind his back, like, made him tap. It was disgusting. So Kazama, great with his jiu-jitsu. For Nakamura, you know how good his wrestling is, but his striking's really come out of nowhere. And my God, for physique levels out of a guy like Nakamura, the guy's built like a brick you-know-what house.
Well, he's a world champion level wrestler, most of them are. I just don't know how Kazama gets this fight to the mat on his terms. And that's what I keep on going back to. Because Nakamura, he has a huge wrestling advantage. You don't need us to tell you that. It's just, it is so ingrained into him. He is a dominant wrestler. But let's say he has any troubles on the mat, and I don't even think he's going to have that, if I'm being completely honest. But let's say he does get uncomfortable from the top position. Well, he's the one with the wrestling advantage. He can decide whether or not they are grapplers or they are going to be strikers. And on the feet, I do think Nakamura not only is the more complete striker, he's the more heavy-handed striker out of the two. He's the far better boxer. I shouldn't say striker, because Nakamura is not going to go in there and hit you with a high level of kicks. He's not going to be like Jamal Hill, throw a bunch of head kicks, a bunch of body kicks. He will work primarily behind the boxing, but like we've seen out of a lot of dominant wrestlers, boxing is great for wrestlers because it makes you compete in that close range, and that helps you with both. The legs right there to grab, the head's right there to punch, and I do think Nakamura does have a decided advantage in the striking, which is really going to matter, because if the ground game is equal, and I don't think it is, I'm just saying, let's say everything is on Kazama's side to where his grappling can cancel out some of Nakamura's, I still think Nakamura on the feet is the better fighter, and I still think he's going to have success in the mat.
And I mean, if you look at it for Kazama, out of his 10 wins, 8 of them are by submission. Like I said, I mean, he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He was the IBJJF, I said ADCC, meant to say IBJJF champ in 2018, 2019. His nickname on the regional scene was Silent Finisher, because her parents are home, Matt. Silent Finisher. That was the nickname. But if you do consider it, I mean, he was one of the guys that actually did get a bye in this tournament. His opponent, Kim Min-woo, weighed in at 139.5, so he got a bye there. Got the win over WLF War star Karimwali Mametwadi, and in that one, I mean, he was 27-11. One of those prospects that WLF Wars, you never know what you're going to get, and that
it's like
time,
a box of chocolates.
You got a bad fighter. But I do look at this matchup, and I agree with you. I think the striking's coming along for Nakamura. He's not one of those Jake Shields, John Fitch type wrestlers, because he's going out there trying to get a finish. Kazama, when it does come to his own striking defense, he can stand kind of square when he walks guys down. He does hold his hands up high, but he holds them kind of like side of the face, so he can get hit straight through the middle. And I see an avenue to be open for the kicks of Nakamura as well. And his kicks are great. I mean, you saw that on the season of Road to UFC. But when we do consider this one, Matt, if you look at the odds, Nakamura is one of the bigger favorites on the card. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us, they are to you. I'm going to say over under 87.5% Nakamura.
I think it'll be well into the 90s.
93% of 843 total votes on Nakamura. 68% by knockout for the 7% that have Kazama. 31% by submission. I'm surprised those aren't higher based on how good Kazama's grappling is in MMA. And we've seen that out of these fights. Again, his takedowns are more, I'm going to wear on you, I'm going to hold you up against the cage, I'm going to try and trick you, and then either go body lock, trip, maybe I switch over to a single, but I did like what I saw out of Kazama on the regional scene. Hopefully, he can get a little bit more seasoning. He's only 25 and maybe does end up in the UFC, but in the matchup like this, I think Nakamura has pretty well all the tools unless he leaves his head out there to get submitted.
I think Nakamura has the highest ceiling out of any of the finalists. And it's just because he has such a dominant foundation, but he's also been able to build on that and show improvements in the other aspects of his game. That's why I think Nakamura's probably got this one.
Matt, both of us going with the hybrid Nico Price. No, I'm just kidding. It's Rinya Nakamura to get the win coming up this weekend against the silent finisher, busting Toshiomi Kazama. Matt, we also have the Featherweight Grand Prix, the Featherweight Tournament Finals. We have the Lightweight Tournament Finals as well with the Road to UFC. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.